it's a new era in CFB to start off this year, put on full display.
My take on this game is simple. I know some people will be upset about it. Good riddance to the Pac-12.
Can you do it in terms of the week to week to week?
I don't see a pathway for this team to miss the college football playoffs.
We want to make sure you have those best bets in the entirety of our betting cards.
That was
thinking! But he had that program was only going there!
Only on SportsGrid.
Crew has already clinched the National League Central. They're 2 games behind LA. That being the Dodgers, trying to maybe get the 2nd seed in the National League standings for October.
Both of these teams have a chance to score some runs against these pitching matchups, so maybe another over, even though we do have a playoff atmosphere. And yes, Milwaukee did clinch, but there's still an eye on the prize of we might be able to chase down the Dodgers and also the Phillies to get one of those buys.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Brian Daboll has been feeling it. He's in a foul mood. He's having stare-downs with Pat Leonard and everything else.
John Mara wants Brian Daboll to go and get the next quarterback. They tried to get the next quarterback. We all watched it on Hard Knocks. They couldn't end up with Daniels. They couldn't end up with May. So they said, okay, we'll run it back a year. We'll go get Neighbors, and we'll tolerate.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish as we get ready for another week of football. The baseball postseason officially begins today. We'll have a preview and hear from the managers and also some of the players involved in it. And, of course, the games begin soon, so get ready. Baseball postseason here on SportsGrid. Also, college football coming up this weekend. We'll recap what happened last weekend, including one of the best games you will ever see between Georgia and Alabama. Bill Bender will be with us from Sporting News. We'll also preview the upcoming weeks in the National Football League as well. We got plenty to get to today, including some college realignment and a very bizarre story on the legal front in sports betting. So let's touch on those. But before we begin, rest in peace, Pete Rose passed away at the age of 83 years old yesterday. Pete Rose just recently had a documentary. And in addition, of course, has still been signing autographs like he always had in Las Vegas. Naturally, he is the hit king. Most hits in the history of Major League Baseball. But his career and his life tarnished by gambling back when he was a manager of the Cincinnati Reds. Needless to say, his lifetime ban in Major League Baseball and through the National Baseball Hall of Fame. Does this end? Still remains to be seen. But Pete Rose, one of the greatest players in the history of the game, passes away at the age of 83 yesterday. Now, this is a bizarre story that just broke recently, and let's give credit to ESPN for breaking this story, that a former employee of the Jacksonville Jaguars who stole more than $22 million from their organization while he was working for them says that he is going to sue the Jaguars, saying that sue FanDuel, not the Jaguars. He is suing FanDuel in federal court on Tuesday, claiming that the sportsbook exploited his gambling addiction and also ignored responsible gaming and anti-money laundering protocols. So this is something we've never seen before. And let me break it down to you in layman's terms. Essentially, what this gentleman named Amit Patel is saying is that someone should have stopped him from his addiction and is suing the sportsbook who took his bets. Folks, I don't know what's going to end up happening here. I do not think he stands any chance of winning this lawsuit. But if you want to read more about it, folks, let's give credit to the people who broke it over at ESPN. Crazy story here. All right, let's move forward. Gonzaga is joining the Pac-12. It was just announced several minutes ago. Looks like they will be finally entering the conference they were rumored to enter. ESPN's Pete Thamel reporting this about 10-15 minutes ago. As they head to the Pac-12, they join Utah State, Boise State, Fresno State, Colorado State, and San Diego State in recent weeks. If you remember a few weeks ago, Gonzaga had said that they would not be joining the Pac-12, so an about face, and we have some crazy stories starting off with you this morning. Now let's get to the stories that everybody knows, because if you watch football, you probably watched the 2 Monday Night Football games last night. One of them was exciting, one of them was not. Let's start with the one that was exciting. That was the Detroit Lions. They end up beating the Seattle Seahawks 42-29 in this game. Jared Goff was absolutely perfect throwing the ball, 18 for 18. Also caught a touchdown pass from Amon-Ra St. Brown. Lions looked like they got things figured out. The Seahawks were undefeated, so they'll travel back home. I don't think they'll be too upset. After the game, Dan Campbell didn't seem to realize that Goff was perfect when he was throwing the ball.
Well, I just gave the game ball to somebody else, so I feel awful right now. Yeah. No, I knew he played a heck of a game. I did not realize he was perfect. I did not know he was literally 18 for 18. But I knew he played really well. You could feel it, and he really found his rhythm early. And I thought he was seeing the field, played with rhythm. He had to move a little bit in the pocket. I thought what really kick-started him is he had to kind of move in the pocket, got spun around, and hung with J-Mo and hit him on the hook for the first down. It was big, man, because he was rolling after that. But just a number of huge throws, played with poise, got us in the right play. It was a heck of a play down in the red zone on the catch. Good throw by Saint. Been working that. So I just thought it was excellent. And credit to Ben Johnson too. I thought he called a heck of a game. It was a good game plan, and really everybody on that offense, stepped up and found a rhythm today.
Well, if that was an exciting game on Monday Night Football, I don't know what you would call this one. One of the worst games we've seen, maybe, on Monday Night Football in some years. Tennessee Titans, Miami Dolphins. Neither team had their starting quarterback for the majority of this game. Of course, Tua Tagovailoa on injured reserve. Snoop Huntley came in. He did not play well for Miami. Will Levis went out in this game. And Mason Rudolph came in and just basically was handing the ball off all game long. 31-12 was the final, and I understand there are 43 points in this game, but that's a bad beat going over the total. It was just a disgusting offensive game played from start to finish. And meanwhile, Miami, they can bring in any quarterback that they want. It feels like they can't get their offense going in any way, can't run the ball. Tyreek Hill did not look good in this game. And now a lot of questions surrounding what Miami may do going forward. Tagovailoa cannot come off injured reserve still for several weeks. So Mike McDaniel, the head coach of the Dolphins, basically says he's looking for any positives to build moving forward.
I thought the defense will probably have one play that they're not pumped about, but outside of that, I thought it was a step in the right direction. I think there was, some, I thought Braxton had a chance to change the momentum of the game, I think the game could have been a different ball game had we not had that early turnover on the lateral pass. So there was some stuff. I thought there was a couple plays here or there, but ultimately there's nothing good about this situation right now in terms of where our team needs to be, and we need to do enough to win a football game against any opponent. And right now, that's not the case. We have to fix that fast.
Yeah, Mike McDaniel did not seem overly optimistic, nor did he look up all that much in that press conference after the game, sorry to say. All right, Christian McCaffrey, folks, get this. He is going to go down in fantasy football history, possibly, as the only player ever to be taken number 1 overall in a fantasy football league and not play a single down in the NFL. I am not kidding. He went to Germany, has come back. The 49ers now say that not only does he have Achilles tendonitis in one leg, he's got it in another. Folks, we may not see him this year. Cooper Kupp for the Rams, not going to play this week also. Brandon McManus, you may remember the story. He is the former kicker in the NFL who was accused of allegedly sexually assaulting someone on a plane last year. NFL has found insufficient evidence to discipline him. So McManus can now kick again in the NFL. And also a fan got into it with Chase Brown, the running back on the Cincinnati Bengals. And the NFL is looking to this right now to see if they can figure out who the fan was and, certainly try and find a way to let this not ever happen again. In Major League Baseball, we do have the postseason beginning, but not before the New York Mets and Atlanta Braves played 2 games yesterday. The Mets won the first, the Braves won the second, so both teams are in, and the Diamondbacks are out. Chris Sale was scratched yesterday with back spasms, and it does not look like he is going to pitch for the Braves in San Diego in that wild card series. The National League wild card will kick off today. The Mets play the Brewers. The Braves play the Padres. The Brewers are minus 126 in game 1 of their 3-game series, and the Padres are minus 164 against Atlanta, basically because we have no clue who's going to start for the Atlanta Braves in that series there. Meanwhile, the American League wildcard series also begins later today. The Detroit Tigers will take on the Houston Astros. Tariq Skubal will pitch against Framber Valdez. Houston is a slight favorite at home. And also, the Kansas City Royals will travel to Baltimore to take on the Orioles in that 3-game series. The Orioles are the biggest favorite of the day today in Major League Baseball at minus 154 and also minus 172 to win that series. We'll be back talking some college football with Bill Bender when we return next.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Sunday Night Football, not really much of a matchup here. And the Bills looked so good up until this point. And, you know, to me, it's probably like a one-off for them.
The basic thing you have to do against the Ravens, force them to pass and try to use their weapons downfield, get them behind. Because if you can do that, then it takes Derrick Henry a little bit out of the game. But if you get them with momentum coming out of the gate, getting a long touchdown run on the first play.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
It was a very busy Saturday in college football. We saw a very big upset, and we'll get to that coming up in just a minute with Ole Miss going down and what that means for the Southeastern Conference. But as Bill Bender and I talked about on Friday, Bill made it pretty clear he was flipping that coin on that Alabama-Georgia game, and that was the right call there. I mean, there was no wrong side there in that game. I guess, Bill, the best side, if you took it, would have been taking Alabama in the first half, because it certainly looked like they were the better team there, but Georgia was by far the better team in the second half of that game. The only thing I think we could wish for, Bill, is a rematch of some kind between these two teams, because that was fun to watch.
An amazing September stage. I likened it to a September Super Bowl, the best Sunday night football matchup you could possibly imagine on the NFL side. That's how it felt. You know, a tale of two halves. Jalen Milroe won the Heisman in the first half, and then Alabama nearly collapsed in the second half. I thought my biggest takeaway was The most important player on the field was Ryan Williams, a 17-year-old freshman who averages 29 yards per catch, made the signature play in that game. And as far as impact for Alabama, you can almost pencil them in the playoff now. Now, they do have rivalry games with Tennessee, LSU. They got to go to Oklahoma on a road game, but I like them in the playoff now. For Georgia, you could say, well, they're in two, but they still have to play Texas, Tennessee, Ole Miss, two of those games on the road, and they better find a running game because that's the weakness that I saw with Georgia right now. If they can't get that running game going, they're going to run into problems in those games. I still think they're good for the playoff, but I thought Alabama came out of that the better team and the better path to what comes next.
Yeah, and Milroe moved ahead of Cam Ward for the Heisman, and as Bill mentioned, without running the ball, Georgia just forced their defense to be on the field way too much in the first half, and that was the reason why. But before we get to this next game, and I do want to hit on Mississippi and what has happened to Kentucky. Bill, at this stage of college football, maybe I don't understand how it works, and maybe I'm not even sure if you know how it works either. But is there a hypothetical scenario that we've never seen before, which is some school going to Ryan Williams and NILing him and offering him an insane amount of money, him leaving Alabama? Like, have we reached that point? Because we haven't seen anything, I don't think, like that significant. Maybe Caleb Williams, I guess he did leave too. But could that happen? Could some team come in and offer Ryan Williams more money than an NFL wide receiver to leave?
Could happen. And you use that as a verb. So maybe I think you're onto something there, because it's going to happen every offseason where you have the two most exciting players in college football right now. Not the best, but the two most exciting are Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State, an outstanding freshman receiver. I don't know if you saw, he had the two back-to-back one-handed catches. He's absolutely phenomenal on that Ohio State team. He leads them in total touchdowns. So I wonder if it becomes a year-to-year thing where these guys have to fight that off because they have to play in college football for 3 years. And I'm looking at those two and I'm thinking, man, they would probably go on day one or day two of the NFL draft, given the importance of the receiver position. So that is something to watch moving forward. In the present tense, watch those two as much as you can. It's about as exciting as you can be.
Yeah, no, it's really hard to navigate through this, to think that you have a kid that's so young and he's going to be with your team for 2 years, minimum, you would think, and now you don't even know if it's more than one. Okay, so Ole Miss fell flat against Kentucky. Let's give the Wildcats credit. They've played tooth and nail with a lot of teams in college football this season. Although, let's also call it what it is. I mean, Mississippi missed a field goal at the end of the game. They make it. Who knows? It goes to overtime. They're still hanging in there. I'm not going to rule out Ole Miss. Again, they play a tough schedule. They play in the SEC. But, Bill, if they lose another one, I think that knocks them out.
1 of 10 on third down against Kentucky. Allowed Kentucky to play keep away. 40 minutes of time of possession for the Wildcats, 20 for Lane Kiffin. The penalties are really catching up with them. They had some bad penalties in that game at the wrong time, which took away from what they do have in Jackson Dart, amazing quarterback. Trey Harris, how good is he? They're going to win some football games, but what you got to see coming down the stretch is, how do they respond in those tough games? They play Georgia. They play LSU in 2 weeks, and all of a sudden that one becomes an elimination game. And by the way, they go to Baton Rouge. Brian Kelly and LSU have lost exactly one home game in the last 3 years, and that was to Hendon Hooker in Tennessee. So that is a trouble spot for Ole Miss. I think they're going to have a tough time getting out of that, because LSU has all the same problems that Ole Miss does, penalties and everything, but they're at home, and Garrett Nussmeier is playing very well.
Yeah, no, he is. And so let's keep an eye on the Wildcats. Maybe they hang around for the entire season. Meanwhile, BYU, what is going on here, Bill? I mean, maybe we should be talking about them more. I know it's been a while to talk about a team in contention here. Are they good? Is this legit?
Well, they have the 9th best odds to win the Big 12. So we're still throwing darts at that conference. What they were able to do at Baylor, jump out to a 28-3 lead and hold on, essentially. The Bears came back. But it just goes to show how unpredictable that conference is. I mean, Colorado's in the mix right now. And I'm being dead serious. I didn't expect Colorado to go to UCF and do what they did to the Knights and have Travis Hunter squarely in the mix for the Heisman Trophy with the 2nd best odds. They have some staying power. So, all that said, if I had to pick one team to win the Big 12, and I can do it this week because they don't play Colorado until next week, I still like Kansas State. They had the meltdown against BYU on the road, but you saw how they bounced back against Oklahoma State. They run the football well. Avery Johnson is incredibly talented, and I think the Wildcats' schedule is set up, if you look at it, no ranked teams until the end of the year, or they play the other sleeper in Iowa State, who's allowing 7.3 points per game. So, Craig, that's my way of telling you this race is far from over.
Yeah, speaking of Colorado, by the way, they pulled off one of the biggest upsets of the week. They go to UCF. Bill, that game was really not competitive at all. I was sort of stunned to see UCF fall so flat. Colorado, kind of, we know who they are. They're going to score points. They're going to give up points. What happened to the Knights in that game?
Yeah, total miscalculation by me as well. I think this Colorado team's good enough to compete in Big 12 games. And we're going to find out against the Wildcats next week because they're going to have to stop that run. Nice wrinkle in that game. Dylan Edwards, the Colorado transfer, playing for Kansas State now. I mean, if you like entertainment, Colorado still has that value with Coach Prime and their star players.
Yeah, they do. All right, Bill, we'll talk later in the week. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, coming up next, it's time to preview one of the games in Major League Baseball. Christian DeBlock, our social media correspondent, talks about the Mets and Brewers next.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Sunday Night Football, not really much of a matchup here. And the Bills looked so good up until this point. And, you know, to me, it's probably like a one-off for them.
The basic thing you have to do against the Ravens, force them to pass and try to use their weapons downfield, get them behind. Because if you can do that, then it takes Derrick Henry a little bit out of the game. But if you get them with momentum coming out of the gate, getting a long touchdown run to the first play.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to the NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We'll get into the Major League Baseball postseason and also touch on a little NFL. It's time now for the SportsGrid Sound Off. Well, at this time of the year, it's time to warm up the NFL coaching hot seat. You know how it works. You don't get off to a good start. You're expected to do better. And then all of a sudden, you're on shows like ours where we're talking about you. Well, unfortunately, that definitely is the case for the Philadelphia Eagles after a really disappointing finish to their season last year. The Eagles don't look great again this year, and Nick Sirianni, of course, is right at the top. He's the head coach of the Eagles, and yesterday discussed his coaching mindset and how to get this team moving in the right direction.
You know, you're just trying to make adjustments that you can make that give you a chance to put the guys in positions to succeed first and foremost. I'm assuming you're asking me as the coaching perspective of it. So first and foremost, you're trying to put guys in positions to succeed and make the adjustments that you need to make. And then, there's a time where it's, hey, encouragement and hope, and there's a time where it's, try to yell and inspire, or do something that on that end of it. And so it's one or the other. But first and foremost, it's trying to get the guys in position to succeed and adjust to the things that are going on, and then the other things that I said.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, is just trying to get some wins. But the Dolphins are feeling it, the Jaguars are feeling it. There's no question the Eagles are feeling it as well. Well, several years ago, who was feeling it? It was A.J. Hinch, of course, many years a manager of the Houston Astros, and then, of course, suspended by Major League Baseball for the cheating scandal that happened with the Houston Astros several years ago. Well, after sitting out a year, he resurfaced, did Hinch, and took over the job as the manager of the Detroit Tigers. And wouldn't you know, the Tigers are back in the postseason. Wouldn't you know, A.J. Hinch is managing his Tigers against his old team, his Astros, as he returns to Houston. Life is about second chances. A.J. Hinch got his, and we'll see if he can make the most of it.
I mean it when I say once you manage or play in 1 October, you want all of them, and we haven't had a lot of them. I haven't had any of them since the last time I was here, and so. But the reason I wanted it is not so much for me, or not so much to get to experience this again. It's the room full of guys. I mean, coaches, players, our front office that's worked tirelessly to build this roster, our owner who took a risk on me when I was on the outside looking in. That's the meaningful part of this matchup and getting us back into October. I'd say I was sitting on a stage in a different city. If we were playing somebody different, it would mean just the same to me. Obviously, my history here brings these questions, and my route to get here has had a few bumps along the way. So I'm very appreciative of being in this role. I'm very appreciative of being one of the teams that's still standing and still fighting to win. And I'm never going to take that for granted. I'm not proud of the story to get here. I've owned up to that, and I will continue to do that. I'm very sorry for how it all went down, but all I had was the next opportunity to try to make it better.
And right now, he has made it better in Detroit as they're in the postseason. Also, one footnote from that series, the Houston Astros just released their wild card roster, and former Cy Young Award winner and future Hall of Famer Justin Verlander not part of the Astros roster as they begin the postseason. Meanwhile, the Mets and Braves are set to battle in their best-of-3 wild card series. Can the Mets pull off the upset in this one? Here's our social media correspondent, Christian DeBlock, with a preview.
Mets have a difficult test as they prepare to face the Brewers in the wild card series. Here are 3 keys for them to advance. The first one is pretty simple. Take game 1. Since 2022, all 8 teams that have advanced past this round have won game 1. With the Mets on the road, that's even more important. Next, the Mets have to limit the stolen bases. In 6 games against the Brewers this season, Milwaukee is 17 for 17 on stolen base attempts. That can't happen in the playoffs. And finally, the Mets have to avoid falling behind early. The Brewers are very good in every department, but the best aspect of their team, their bullpen. 3.11 ERA in the regular season, second best in all of baseball. You have to avoid trailing against them late in the game. Back to you, Craig.
All right, thanks very much, Christian. Baseball gets underway here in a couple of hours, so keep it right here to SportsGrid for the latest. We'll be back with Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report next.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night, I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Sunday Night Football, not really much of a matchup here. And the Bills looked so good up until this point. And, to me, it's probably like a one-off for them.
The basic thing you have to do against the Ravens, force them to pass and try to use their weapons downfield, get them behind. Because if you can do that, then it takes Derrick Henry a little bit out of the game. But if you get them with momentum coming out of the gate, getting a long touchdown run on the first play.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Pat Evans is with us from Legal Sports Report. We've got that big vote coming in Missouri to see if they legalize sports gambling there. Folks, this is now, I believe, like 1 month away from happening. So let's get to the very latest there. It's a story we're going to be covering intensely here on NewsWire. Pat Evans is with us. And Pat, the teachers union now speaking out on the sports betting bill. I mean, look, this is gaining a lot of momentum on this. There's some negativity too. Let's not get it twisted. I see some articles about this and responsible gaming and, look what's happened in other places. But the more I'm sort of reading about this, the more it does seem to me that they're going to get the votes that they need.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a really interesting month. As you just mentioned, we're a month from Election Day, which is wild to think about that this year's flown by and we're there, basically. This is going to be a really close kind of issue to watch. We're seeing tons of people on both sides come out. Of course, FanDuel and DraftKings have funded $21.5 million, and I'm sure there's going to be more coming in to support this ballot initiative. And Caesars, of course, is kind of the lone operator on the other side funding the opposition PAC with a $4 million donation. And so this is just a really tight kind of contest at this point. Polling numbers show about 52% for, but of course, where are the margins of errors and what have you. And what this is interesting because the Kansas City Teachers Union came out and said they're against this amendment, which is really interesting because the campaign for this ballot amendment is called Winning for Missouri Education, which, they're funding education with the sports betting taxes, which is 10%. And they, there's a study that came out that within, 5 years, you'll get about $38.7 million in taxes or so for Missouri public education, which both gubernatorial candidates that are up for election in a month have come in and said, they're for this amendment because they want to help fund education, and that, they both think that, teacher wages need to go up in Missouri because I think it's about 47th for average teacher pay in the U.S. So, this is an issue that people are trying to push because they want to fund education, or that's what they're saying anyway. Well, the teachers union in Kansas City says, well, let's slow the roll here. You can't promise wages based on, fluctuating tax numbers, basically, is what they said. And there were a few other reasons they oppose it. But just a really kind of interesting take because you've got teachers who would benefit from this, supposedly, or, and are saying, well, I don't know about this. We we need to tread carefully. It'll be interesting to see what other teacher unions in Missouri, if there are other ones. I'm not quite sure. I'm not fully up to date on the teacher unions in Missouri, but maybe I should be. See what they do. The St. Louis Post-Dispatch came out and said they're for the ballot initiative. So, you've got lots of supporters, not that many detractors yet. But opposition campaigns can do wonders or terrible things to campaigns. So we'll see what happens to polling numbers. I'm sure there's going to be some soon. I saw the PAC, the opposition PAC has done some polling. I expect to see those numbers soon, and we'll see if they resemble the numbers that the Winning for Missouri Education has put out. So it's a big thing. We're a month away. Again, something I'm going to be watching very closely as others watch other things much more carefully on Election Day.
Yeah, it's sort of hard to believe, because if I'm a teacher in the state and I'm seeing my contingents not back this so I could make more money, I don't know how I would feel about that. So I got to say, I want to keep an eye on this story as we move forward and get closer to Election Day. It doesn't really add up to me. But all right, let's talk about sports advertising for sports wagering in Canada. We've seen a little bit of a drop-off here coming, and we know that there's more restrictions in Canada than there are in the U.S.
Yeah, so this is something I was watching just before coming on here, and then it wrapped up just in time, so I wasn't late for you, Craig. It would never be late for you, but, there's going to be another one tomorrow. Today was just kind of hearing witnesses. There were 2 hearings last week where they talked about it. Tomorrow's is going to be interesting because it's the commission that's going to kind of be tweaking it with amendments and considering clause by clause and probably voting it for or against to get out of the committee. So that'll be an interesting meeting tomorrow night. But yeah, Ontario has pretty strict, advertising rules. And that's been shown through fines. I mean, when it first launched in 2022, there were quite a few fines against operators, including, BetMGM and PointsBet and the like, for TV ads, ads at transit stations, billboards that, offered promotions or showed promotions. But in Ontario, you need to opt into ads. So you can't just get those promos out in the public. So that, that's one of them. They amended their laws or regulations to prohibit using athletes in advertising except for responsible gaming ads. Right. So there's those things. But then the national parliament introduced a bill last year that this is the one they're talking about, to create a national framework for advertising, because a lot of people have been fed up with how many ads have come through. And it's a lot of the same things we've seen in Ontario, some of the same things we've seen here in Ohio and Illinois, prohibiting the use of free bets and, again, not using athletes, not advertising in places where kids or people under 21 are, things like that. And, there's a lot of pushback from the industry, of course, but they're also saying, we don't need a national framework. You just need a strong place like Ontario, and the rest of the provinces will kind of be cascaded through that, because operators aren't going to make different ads for different places. And then the other thing is you've seen a lot of witnesses say, listen, there was a huge amount of ads because it was a new industry, but it wasn't that many. It wasn't in the top 20 advertisers. It's starting to fall off. There's a broadcaster last week who was like, you know what, our channels are saying the demand for this time is already waning. We don't need to go too crazy on this. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens tomorrow. One thing I took away from it, which was funny, it makes you think, because, yeah, of course, we notice all the sports betting ads when we're watching games and whatever. But, maybe take away how many advertisements there are for pickup trucks. And then a month later, implement them and see if you take a big notice of them and say, whoa, that's a lot of pickup ads, and see where it goes from there. So again, this is going to be an interesting meeting tomorrow where the parliamentarians are going to go clause by clause to check in to see what happens. Again, Canada's been a very interesting place for the advertising of sports betting. This framework, they say they want to kind of compare it or make it similar to what they have in tobacco advertising restrictions and regulations. So, which are very, very tight, and you don't see a ton of tobacco advertisements. So again, just a really interesting thing. We'll talk about this meeting or the clause by clause thing next week, I'm sure, when I'm on.
Yeah, a lot of tobacco ads in the 70s there, Pat, but we've gone away from that. Maybe in the 80s too, I think a little bit, but not now. Okay, let's end with this would be great for the Carolina Panthers. Give fans something to root for, I guess. Retail sports betting and maybe coming to their stadium, I think too, from what I saw. So regardless of results, at least you can ease the pain with some losing by betting on some other teams.
Yeah, I mean, it is an interesting thing. Last week, the Sports Betting Commission regulators approved the beginning of in-person sports betting in Carolina, which is kind of unique because in a lot of markets, we've seen in-person sports betting start before online sports betting, which North Carolina already has, or at least at the same time. So it's, we're almost a year out from when North Carolina got started, or I guess 6 months, or I forget exactly when it launched. But I mean, an in-person sports betting doesn't make up that big of a chunk of a handle. So it's really an interesting kind of time for this to roll out, but it'll be fun to see them anyway, because an in-person sports book is a good time.
It is. All right, Pat. Great stuff as always. Thanks for coming on NewsWire. Always fun to talk to you about these topics. Thanks again.
Thanks, Craig.
All right. Pat Evans with us from Legal Sports Report. All right, coming up next, the Baltimore Ravens are once again one of the hot teams in the NFL. Only took a couple of weeks to turn it around. Melissa Kim from 105.7 The Fan is up next to talk about the Ravens. Don't go away.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Sunday Night Football, not really much of a matchup here. And the Bills looked so good up until this point. And, to me, it's probably like a one-off for them.
The basic thing you have to do against the Ravens, force them to pass and try to use their weapons downfield, get them behind. Because if you can do that, then it takes Derrick Henry a little bit out of the game. But if you get them with momentum coming out of the gate, getting a long touchdown run to the first play.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
I'll break up the Baltimore Ravens. Their demise was greatly overstated. They are right back in the mix in the AFC. They've looked fantastic over the last couple of weeks and, really honestly could have won any of the games that they played in. Let's bring in Melissa Kim. She, of course, is talking Baltimore Ravens and covering them, working for 105.7 The Fan. And I think when you look at this, for me, the bottom line is I think, Melissa, that people just forget how good a coach Harbaugh is. They make adjustments over the course of the season, and it looks like they've made one pretty quickly with just giving that ball to Derrick Henry, haven't they?
Yeah, John Harbaugh nearing 2 decades coaching in the league, right? So definitely a lot of experience, especially in terms of turning teams around. And, coming into this season, there was a lot of chatter, of course, about the offensive line. They lost 3 guys in the offseason, 3 veteran guys, which is, I think, the key point there. So they're literally starting Andrew Voorhees at left guard, who had a redshirt year last year in his rookie season. Daniel Fa'alele at right guard, who had his fair share at tackle, so not necessarily the guard position. So he transitioned over the guard position. And then a little mix of Patrick McCary, who is their offensive lineman that can play literally any position on that line, as well as Roger Rosengard, the rookie out of Washington. So that obviously was basically the big talker into training camp and in the preseason, because you don't really know how these guys are going to play together. And because the starters don't really play a whole lot in the preseason, they really didn't actually get going until week 1. And you think about the games that they lost, right? Obviously, Kansas City literally lost by a toenail. And then in week 2 against the Raiders at home, a very rare occurrence for this team to lose at home. But Gardner Minshew has had their number before. But again, a game that was close. And then they finally go on the road to Dallas, finally getting a win against Dak Prescott, and then coming back home on Sunday Night Football and beating arguably one of the best teams in the league in the Bills. So it obviously has taken some time for them to gel, which we expected. I think this was something that was an expectation because of the lack of reps that the offensive line got together. And now we're seeing vintage King Henry that we saw in the Titans, the guy that can literally truck through other human beings, multiple human beings, and really wear down other run defenses.
Yeah, you mentioned it, the vintage part, because Derrick Henry did not look that great in his last year in Tennessee. And you would probably take the game that he had the other night and say, okay, that's the best game he's had in over a year. I think that's fair. 199 yards, including an 87-yard touchdown. And as we take a look at the upcoming schedule for the Ravens, they take on the Bengals, the Commanders, the Buccaneers, the Browns, and the Broncos. And although I'm a pretty big Commanders backer now at this point, with the way that they played, beyond that,
right?
Yeah, I mean, they were playing great. I can't sit here and say anything negative about them, but it does feel like out of these next 5 games, which we know nothing about, and we're flipping coins, that's true. It does feel like at the very worst, they should be getting 3 wins out of these 5.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that those wins are so important to stack those wins, right? You hear the team and head coach John Harbaugh talking about that a lot, because looking down the stretch, the meat of their schedule before the bye week, which is not until week 15 this year, they've got a lot of really short weeks. They're playing on a Sunday and then on a Thursday or a Saturday, then on a Wednesday, that Christmas Day game in Houston. So they've got to really get those wins where they can right now. And obviously going against a division opponent, they're never going to take the Bengals lightly. Honestly, the Bengals were my pick to win the division coming into the season. And obviously that has transpired not the way that I thought it was going to. But regardless, and then you have the Commanders, as you said. I mean, it's such a great time to be a football fan in the Baltimore and DMV area, because they have 2 dynamic quarterbacks right now. Jayden Daniels is playing his tail off. I've heard from Commanders fans around the area who literally have not really paid a whole lot of attention to this team in the last decade. And now everybody is on the Jayden Daniels train. So it's a really cool time that I think that one is the one that I'm circling on my calendar as the game to watch right now of the Ravens' next 5 games.
Yeah, look, it's undeniable that, look, this could be the Houston of last year for me with Washington. At least that's the way that it feels like as their trajectory continues. So, let's take a look real quick at the AFC North heading into week 5. And then I do have a question about one player on Baltimore in particular that I think a lot of people are going to want to know more about. But the Steelers, they played well again last week. They sort of fumbled it away. The Colts lost to Flacco. As we mentioned, the Ravens back on track. Bengals, I don't know what to make of that win in Carolina. I still think Cincinnati's defense, Melissa, is horrible. They can't stop anybody. And I think the Browns are done. I don't think the Browns are going anywhere this season based on what I've seen. Is that a fair assessment? Am I not giving the Browns enough credit? Am I not giving the Bengals enough credit here? I feel like even though it is crowded, it is Baltimore and it is Pittsburgh there at the top, unless something happens with Cincinnati's defense and I'm not aware of.
No, Cincinnati's defense has not been the best. The Browns' O-line, not been the best. I mean, almost worse than I thought it was going to be at the beginning of the season, if I could say that. The Steelers coming into this week, no offense to them, I thought they were kind of a fraudulent, undefeated team because they depended so much on their field goals, right? They weren't really getting the offense rolling. And their defense kind of had a lackluster week this past week as well. So I think it's a fair assessment to say that's the Ravens and the Steelers at this point, because again, you go back to the coaching, right? We talked about head coach John Harbaugh in the beginning. Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season in his entire head coaching tenure. So I will never put anything past that man, because even there was 2 seasons ago where he, I think, was on the brink of going below 500, but ended up beating the Ravens that year. It was Ben Roethlisberger's last year. So I would never put anything past a Mike Tomlin coach team.
All right. So, Melissa, as we end here, the one question that I know transcends regular football and moves into fantasy football, and I'm sure you've been asked this question as well, because I need to know also. Mark Andrews, Melissa, what is going on here? Is this it? Is this the end of the line here? I know Lamar is backing him and everything like that, but I don't know what to do here.
You see my reaction, right? That's kind of been the big, if there is
sure.
a cloud over the Baltimore offense right now, Mark Andrews has kind of been it, because we all know that he is Lamar Jackson's favorite target. We saw him get into a lot of double coverage situations to start the season off against the Chiefs. Isaiah Likely had an insane game. But no, I don't think it's the end for Mark Andrews. Absolutely not at all. I think he's still that reliable target. I think that it's taking, just like the rest of this offense, it's taking a couple weeks for him to really get going this season. So everybody that's been, putting bets on Mark Andrews, fantasy guys, just be patient. He said, be patient. He's definitely not cooked by any stretch of the imagination.
All right. I'll take your word for it, Melissa. I'm only going to give you one more week on this, though. One more week.
Right.
I got to let it go. Thanks again.
Sounds good.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the game starts, so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Sunday Night Football, not really much of a matchup here. And the Bills looked so good up until this point. And, to me, it's probably like a one-off for them.
The basic thing you have to do against the Ravens, force them to pass and try to use their weapons downfield, get them behind. Because if you can do that, then it takes Derrick Henry a little bit out of the game. But if you get them with momentum coming out of the gate, getting a long touchdown run of the first play.
NewsWire, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. If you love baseball and you love the postseason, today is your day. Plenty of games coming up later. Let's dive into it. It's time now for some last licks. Mets and Braves played a doubleheader yesterday. They each won one game of the two, and that's what they each needed to get into the postseason. I know Diamondbacks fans are very upset with the Mets, because it certainly did not look like they put their best foot forward in that second game of the doubleheader. A little bit of a sleepy game, and then the Braves ended up winning. This is a little known fact. I don't know if you knew this out there, but after the Mets won the first game, they could have technically forfeited, if they wanted to save their bullpen and save their pitchers, their players, and handed the Braves the win. They didn't forfeit, but I kind of felt like they handed them the win. And so much so, Diamondbacks fans are super mad because even after the game ended, they were like celebrating with each other on the field. Both teams celebrating themselves getting into the postseason together. Hopefully some lesson was learned from this. I mean, I don't think we want to get into another scenario. I know there are tiebreakers that have to be played sometimes on a Monday before the postseason begins Tuesday. I don't think you want to do a doubleheader, though, on a Monday ever again. And look, from Arizona's perspective, they were the big story in the National League last year. Remember, they got all the way to the World Series, and they lost to the Texas Rangers. This time they're not there. Neither is Texas. We're going to have a new National League winner. We're going to have a new American League winner in less than a month in the postseason in Major League Baseball. So congrats to the Mets. Congrats to the Braves. They're both in. So are the Phillies. 3 teams from the NL East get in again. Washington, not bad either. They could be good next year. All right, finally, Major League Baseball has basically, I think, come to terms with the fact that people don't love watching the All-Star game when they can't figure out who the players are. And part of that is because they've done a really good job creating these different uniforms for the players to sell some more merch. In fact, at the All-Star game this past year, I went to Texas. I bought my son a cap. I got one for myself. I don't think it's in my office, so I can't show it to you. But that's the only good thing about it. A lot of people are complaining, saying, hey, look, when I watch the game on TV, I want to know what team I'm watching, which player that they represent the team. And so they're going back to this. Starting next year, it's going back to the old way they used to do the All-Star game. They'll be wearing their actual jerseys that they wear during the regular season in the All-Star game. The only thing that I could tell you, folks, if you think that this is the end of the story, there's no way. There'll be a wrinkle. There'll be more than a logo. Things have to get sold, folks, for the upcoming All-Star game. This year it's going to be in Atlanta, and I guarantee you we have not heard the last of this. But at least for the time being, you're going to see your favorite players play for the teams that they play for, representing the team that they are in their own jerseys. Now, around the NBA yesterday, in case you missed it, for the majority of teams in the league, it was Media Day. And that meant it was Media Day for the first time with a father and son on the same team. And that, of course, is LeBron James and Bronny James. Bronny had some interesting comments, by the way, saying that he would not be offended if he was sent to the G League to start the season. I don't know if that's a possibility or not, but either way, it could happen. The other thing that happened yesterday is we learned that Bronny's mom and LeBron's wife was playing the video game NBA 2K and not playing with her husband, but playing with her son. Actually, we can't show you the video of the video game because it's copyright infringement, but the bottom line is Savannah James, the mom of Bronny and the wife of LeBron, was playing NBA 2K with Bronny in the game. I don't know if you caught a lot of the video, though. I would tell you this from watching some of the media interviews in Los Angeles yesterday, which it genuinely does seem like LeBron is over the moon about his son playing in the NBA. Like, he has never looked happier, never looked to – and maybe that does something for him this season. I don't know. It's still sort of incredible that LeBron is going to be playing 25, 30 years in the National Basketball Association, but definitely a great scene, I thought, for the Lakers yesterday. All right, that will do it for our show today. Thanks to Melissa Kim for coming on the show from 105 to 7, The Fan in Baltimore. Also, thanks to Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report, and also Bill Bender from Sporting News. Our associate producer, as always, is Luke, and our producer today, as always, is Frank. Now, coming up, we've got, of course, plenty of great programming for you here on SportsGrid. Most importantly, with the baseball postseason getting underway, we've got all the live action covered for you with Scott Farrell, coast to coast, 3 o'clock Eastern. Make sure you tune into his show. He'll be live giving you all the updates, as well as on Game Time Decisions in-game live. And, of course, Gabe tonight will be on Rage and have a full recap of all of those games and also the WNBA playoffs. That'll do it for our show today. We'll see you tomorrow here on NewsWire tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, exclusively here on SportsGrid. Have a great day.